For double strokes, there's basically 3 different techniques, all right? And of course, we have heel down once again. And really, that's where you're cranking out the doubles all with your ankle, okay? The foot is on the footboard the whole time. And really, as you get faster, that technique's not going to change. So the ankle's involved. You hit one note, the first note of the double, and you're just coming right back up with your ankle before you hit a second one. On the second one, again, I'm burying the beater, so I'm keeping the bass drum beater against the head. If you want to play out of the drum, or if you want to have a little bit more of a full tone on an acoustic kit, you can have the beater come off the head completely. So that's just a preference. Now, the second technique is heel toe, all right? So that's where you're kind of doing this rocking motion. So you lift the heel comes down for the first note, you lift the front of your foot, and then that comes back down for the second note. In both cases, at least some part of your foot is still on the footboard, all right? So if I do heel toe, I lift my heel, kind of like I'm doing a single, heel up single. So I lift my heel, I come back down so that the entire foot is on the footboard. Then I just do another stroke with my ankle. Then you just go back down for that second note. Now with practice, you can get that going fairly fast, although for me, there's a lot of motions involved. Now, in some ways, it's easier than heel down because there's 2 motions. There's 2 distinct motions, all right? Heel toe. And if you streamline it, you can actually get some pretty fast doubles. And there's a lot of players that play this way, and they can crank out some really fast doubles. I do not play this way. When I do doubles, I play heel up for everything. So when I'm doing doubles, I'm doing heel up technique. And I mentioned this in my other video, the one on YouTube, where basically, the drummer that I think of when I do doubles in this fashion with heel up is Dave Weckl. That's where I initially saw this technique. And I was actually playing heel down at the time. And he demonstrated it in a way that just made sense, and I saw how fast he was able to play doubles, and at that point I just decided, well, clearly that's the way I need to play. I just made a decision to do it, to change, to learn that technique, and I've been doing it ever since. So what I'm doing, we have heel up again, home position, few inches off the ground. The heel's a few inches off the ground. For the first note of the double, all right, I am lifting my heel, and typically I'll bring my foot back just a little bit. Now, this isn't necessary. This is just how I do it. My toes will come back a little bit. They're still on the footboard, though. So you can see they've moved down just a little bit. All right. And what I do is, in that position, as I move back, I hit my first note of the double. All right, so now the first note of the double, my heel's a bit higher, my toes have moved down the pedal just a little bit, okay? To hit the second note of the double, all I really think about is going back to that home position. Again, here's the home position, heel just a few inches off the footboard, and the toes are about 3/4 of the way up the footboard, all right? So first note of the double, back to the home position for the second note of the double. First note, second note. As I'm doing this slower, I'm exaggerating that motion a little bit, but as you get quicker, it's really just a really quick snap. And the amount that you move, the quicker you do anything, the more streamlined it is. But again, sometimes to learn it, it's easier to exaggerate the technique, exaggerate the motion, so you can kind of understand it, and then you start to streamline it. 1, 2, 1, 2. And notice my leg is only going up once and down once. It's really just one motion. 1, 2. I'm not going. And even for slower doubles, typically I'm still using the slide technique. I try to use the slide technique no matter what the tempo is of the double, no matter how slow. I really try to use the doubles or the slide technique for even slower doubles. Now, there will be a certain point where, if you want to consider that a double, if you want to think of that as a double, okay, yeah, I'm using my entire leg, but I think of that more as a single stroke technique. But any doubles, I'm typically using the slide technique no matter how slow or how fast. So once again, 1, 2. So we're doing this motion. And the leg comes up and then down. It's not moving up twice. 1, 2. It's going up once and then right back down. So it's really one motion. 1, 1. You can see if I do a single note, my leg's moving up and down once. Same thing if I do doubles. Because of what I'm doing with my foot, my leg is only still moving once. Okay, so it's just that position of the foot on the first note down to the second note. 1, 2. That's what makes this double work. And the slide. Now, again, I'm not sliding far. But there is a bit of a slide that happens. Some people will do this technique and they won't move back. They won't slide, and that's perfectly fine, all right? So that means they do the first note of the double like this from their home position. They haven't moved back, and then they go right back down. They're not sliding. That's perfectly fine, all right? If that works for you, that might be something for you to try. That's a little variation. But for me, I prefer to have that slide. And that slide is actually going to become useful later on for kind of an advanced technique that we're going to talk about. But another little variation that happens is my ankle will pivot in on that second note, all right? Or really, you can think of it either way. It's kind of pivoting in on the second note, or it's pivoting out on the first note. Really, it's kind of moving out in. 1, 2. Now, I don't want you to think about that, overthink that. That's not something I think about. It's just something that happens naturally. Some people will not, will do the slide and their foot will remain perfectly straight. For me, that inward pivot just happens naturally. I'm not practicing it that way. Okay, my ankle has to come out and then has to go in. You can, if you really want to exaggerate that to get used to it, you certainly can. But when I worked on this, I wasn't really thinking so much about the pivot. I noticed it was happening. Again, I was more concerned with, am I sliding, am I moving back on the pedal, and then going back to that home position. And even as you practice that slower, the slide, there's not so much pivot. But as I get faster, the pivot actually starts to happen more at higher speeds. And again, it just kind of happens naturally for me anyway. So I'll start slow and then speed up. So that is the technique for the doubles, heel up, all right?